have our conversations with them. And we have with us this morning Sergeant Emmanuel Yorke, and he's going to be bringing us the T.T.P.S crime updates. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Adanna. Good morning, Nakili. For the past week, Tobago has been pretty much safe. Right. What we had over the weekend, as most people would know, there were two bodies found, one at Studley Park and one at Lowlands. Right. Those are presently active investigations, so we cannot say what, if anything, went on with those bodies. We also had a situation where we recovered a firearm over the weekend, and added to that, we recovered a vehicle that was stolen in Trinidad. The person was arrested. He also had a drug called Molly, so he was arrested for those offenses. He's presently assisting the police in Trinidad with this investigation as the vehicle was stolen in Trinidad. So I must say kudos to Inspector Alfred and his team for a job well done in that seizure and taking that person off the streets.
Congratulations as well. And just before we move on to our next topic, I just want to touch a little bit on the mobile policing in Scarborough. Can you give us any updates in terms of the impact? Because they've been there for a couple of months now, I believe. How have you seen a reduction in crime in terms of controlling crime? I know for the last week we had quite a quiet time here on the island of Tobago. Can you attribute it to that as well?
Yes, I can. And I'm glad you brought that up, because just when Thursday, somebody made a report to the officers who were at the booth in relation to an offense of predia larceny, and they arrested the perpetrator while on patrol at the booth there. So the booth is working, right? It makes access to persons a lot easier. So instead of coming up to the station to make that report, he made it right there. They saw the person and he was arrested, and he went before the court. So yes, there's a good impact from that booth there. And they even assist with the traffic regulations in Scarborough. Right? Also, we have this problem with school children going to the back of the mall and assembling in front of the drugstore and so on. They are mandated to deal with those things also. So yes, I have seen a great impact from the booth and the officers operating at the booths.
Sergeant Yorke, we know that there have been 6 murders on the island, and they reported that 4 have been solved. In terms of the other 2, can you give us an idea of how those investigations are going?
Well, as I said before, those investigations are ongoing investigations, and we treat each offense on its own merits. So, yes, we have leads, but that we are following up on, right? But I wouldn't be able to say much on them because of the fact that they are at a sensitive stage and they are ongoing investigations.
All right. Well, we do hope that the T.T.P.S finds successes in solving those murders, as well as other criminal activities where criminals are apprehended and arrested, that we can find resolution where they are concerned. So I want to move now to our next topic. We're talking about preparing for the October Carnival, the Tobago Carnival, which takes place later on this month, I think in the next 2 weeks, in fact. And I know a lot of agencies have been coming together, state agencies, protective services, the committee, the planning committee, they have been coming together to put logistics in place for to ensure that we have a safe carnival. And the T.T.P.S, of course, plays a very, very important role. But we want to talk a little bit about the traffic regulations, because sometimes people might get a little confused, or they might be frustrated when they want to get through one part and they can't pass there. So just to enlighten our viewers, to enlighten the general population and the users of especially that area, how is the traffic going to be managed, and how is it going to be diverted in order for the revelers to have a good time, as well as for the road users to use the road effectively?
Nice. The police, the T.T.P.S is here to ensure safety and security. And we know that there will be inconvenience to some persons. What our function is to minimize these inconveniences as much as possible. And you brought up the Carnival, but I think I'll start just before the Carnival, because this coming weekend we have what they call Pan Omega, which takes place at the Market Square. That would also call for traffic restrictions to take place in Scarborough. So from about 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, we will have a blockage of the Calypso Rose Boulevard up to just where T.T.P.S is. That is just before the Wilson Road traffic lights, right? And the entire area of Garden Side will be blocked off from 3 p.m. on Saturday, right? This is to facilitate the show actually starts at 7, but the blockage from that time is to facilitate the putting up of infrastructure as it relates to that function. Right? We don't want anybody to be injured or anybody's personal belongings, property to be damaged. And it gives us the time to have the vehicles that are in the area to get out. So we have that blockage from that period. Right? Moving on to the Carnival, what we would have is a blockage, well, the same as we had last year, where we blocked from the Spring Garden, the Orange Hill traffic lights, right, straight up to the Wilson Road traffic lights, and that entire cycle in Scarborough. But what we would be doing at the Wilson Road traffic light and the Orange Hill traffic lights is that it is going to be cutting a diagonal. The junction is going to be cutting a diagonal.
Yeah.
So the persons coming out from, the revelers coming out from Shore Park, they would use the eastern side of that intersection, while vehicles would be able to proceed on the western side up into Orange Hill.
Yes.
Right.
Right? And when you reach the Wilson Road traffic lights, that would just go in the opposite direction now. So the revelers will be on the western side of that intersection, and vehicles will be able to traverse the eastern side of that intersection. What we also did is that we have made the area of Mount Mary, that whole area to the back of RC, where RC is, the Bishop's High School, that whole zone in the back there, that will be used for emergency vehicles to get in and out of Scarborough, for the persons with the bands, for their vehicles to replenish whatever they need to replenish. What we see in that area is that there's a lot of tributaries that you could come out, Breeze Hall, Mount Mary, Smithfield number 1, Smithfield number 2, Sangsters Hill, Wilson Road. Right? So it makes it easy for them to access where their band is, and also for the emergency vehicles to get in and out. Now, there are persons who are living in the Scarborough area. Most of those persons living in the Scarborough area actually live in that Mount Mary area. So it will be easy for them to get in and out. That area will be accessed from the walkover at Bishop's High School, where you come from across Spring Garden, cross the highway, straight into Mount Mary. Right? We know that there's a church that takes place in there on a Sunday mornings. So those persons would also be able to utilize that area if they need to get in to get to church and get out before the revelry actually starts. Now, the blockage for that on Juve morning starts at 3 a.m. So I'm asking persons, if you have to do anything in that area and you do not have passes, get in and get out before 3 a.m. Additionally, we would be issuing passes to persons from the Senior Soup's office, persons who have legitimate reasons to be in the enclosed area could apply for a pass and get it from the Senior Soup's office.
That was going to be my next question in terms of issuing passes, and you're saying persons with legitimate causes. What are some of the legitimate reasons that people would want to apply for a pass or qualify for a pass to get in and out in that time frame?
There are persons who work in the area who must get to work. We cannot stop the workers from going to work. So those persons would be eligible for passes. There are some persons who have businesses in the area, they would be granted passes to go to their business, right? The persons in the mass bands, they will be granted passes. Persons who have reasons to operate, different workers within Carnival settings would also be given passes. What I could say for the residents, once you show a proof of address to the officer you reach at the intersection, you would be granted access to get to your place of residence.
Whether or not you have a pass.
Whether or not you have a pass.
And churchgoers as well. For Sunday.
Right. The
How is that
churchgoers
working
would
out?
not be going into the actual Carnival area, so because they would be at the Mount Mary area. I think this church is at Smithfield.
There's a church in Sangsters Hill as well that you have to consider. So there's
Right.
Smithfield, Sangsters Hill. I think those are the two churches in that
The
area.
other one would be the Adventist church, but they on
They're
Yeah.
on Saturday, so we don't have
Right.
to. Yeah.
If you remember from inception, I said that you get across to Mount Mary.
Right.
And all those areas, those two churches that you speak about, they are in the Mount Mary area,
Good.
so they do not have to get onto the
main carriageway.
area, so they would not really need a pass.
But as we raised the issue, and we just spoke to about the Adventist church, the Juve, I believe, finishes at a time that may clash with the time the Adventist church service begins. If I'm not mistaken, they might finish at around 9,
Juve
10.
finishes at 10.
Right. I'm not sure what time the Adventist church starts, but those persons, would they also need passes to get to their church to perhaps open and prepare for the service?
Right. Remember, also, if you come down from that same Mount Mary area, you could get into the back where TLH is there, and they could access the area from there, right? Because, let's be reasonable, there'll be revelry on the main road.
Yeah.
And even though you're going to open a church, yes, you don't want to drive your car through all those persons to go there, right? So I would advise them to use that same access route at the back and get into their area, because the Juve finishes at 10. Most likely their service would start maybe 10 or thereafter, because it would not be feasible to have church going on whilst the revelry is taking place in Scarborough. So it most likely would be after the Juve celebrations are finished, so then they will be free to get to church.
And in terms of management of the traffic, because I know in as much as we put regulations in place and we advise the public, there are some persons who, I mean, you're reveling, there's alcohol involved, and sometimes your inhibitions might be a little bit out of control. Are you convinced that the T.T.P.S has enough resources to ensure that the crowds can be managed, the traffic can be managed, and general behavior can be managed in such a way that the average person will not be affected negatively in throughout the Carnival proceedings?
Yes, I'm positive that we can do that. We have sought and are getting assistance from our brothers in Trinidad, so there will be officers coming up to assist us. We also have assistance from the Defense Force. They also will have a group of persons there assisting us with the regulations of the traffic and supervision of the crowd in Scarborough. What I must say in relation to that area at Mount Mary, we'll be placing no parking signs along that area, because it is not because of the fact that it is an emergency route and emergency exit. We do not want persons to park helter-skelter in the back there. So we would be placing no parking signs, and they would be enforced. There will be officers on patrol in the back there ensuring that that is done. And we're trying not to take away an extra $500 from persons when your vehicle is wrecked. Right? So we are asking persons to adhere to the road signs, adhere to the signs that are placed down, and let's all have a safe and enjoyable carnival.
And a good place to wrap up this conversation this morning, to have a good and a safe carnival. Thank you so much, Sergeant Yorke, for coming on this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Sergeant Emmanuel Yorke of the T.T.P.S this morning. as he brought to us the crime updates for the island of Tobago. Been very quiet for the past week, and we're happy about that. And of course, the regulations, the traffic regulations as it relates to events happening in and around the Scarborough area for the Tobago October Carnival. So take heed to the information and look out for more information as it relates, because you might be impacted and you want to be compliant to the rules. We have to go for a short break before we continue conversations this morning, and as we go, we invite you to help us.
Share the live, share the live, share the live.
We'll be right back.